Hello, everyone. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Lord of the Rings. And specifically, I want to talk about Theoden of Rohan, who's the king of Rohan. And I think his journey and his character development in the movie is really powerful and I think can apply to your and my life directly as a metaphor right now. And so we get to know Theoden in the movie. In the second part of the movie, I think this is really when he comes up in the second part of the Lord of the Rings as this man who's like really in the fog. Let's call it that. He's like, we might say he's depressed. He can barely move his body, and he's very safe and comfortable. At least this is how I think he appears. He's probably miserable, but he's also safe and comfortable in this familiar pattern of being possessed by Saruman, of having his person next to him. You know, he really doesn't like his life, I believe, and I think he's also cozy in the comfort of the dis-ease in a way, right? And I think right then and there, I think this is a great metaphor for how we are often in our lives. So we all have our patterns, which we know we don't like, but they're kind of safe, whether that's a relationship or a job or a friendship or some activity that we do that we know we don't really like, but we're kind of like Theoden, we're kind of like grumpy in the fog and uncomfortable, but yet we like it weirdly, right? And so then in comes this force in the movie. It's Gandalf. In your and my life, it might be some person, it might be something within ourselves. In comes this force all of a sudden that really confronts this pattern, that confronts this contraction, right? Theoden, he's really like, he seems like he can barely move because he's so tense. So in comes this force that for a brief moment, as kind of Gandalf comes into his staff and confronts Theoden, makes it very painful for him. You can see the grimace in his face, you can see how his body's contorting even more, and how this demon, Saruman, is really confronted, right? And I think this is another piece to Theoden's development that applies to your and my life. When we come to a point where we can't take it anymore, or we don't want to take it anymore, and we confront this pattern, often, if you watched videos of me before, the pattern in our body, the kind of a form of contraction, a form of depression, where we repress feelings, experiences. When we confront that for a brief moment, it actually gets more painful. I've talked about this modality called the Greenberg method before. We can link to it again. There's this book called Becoming Yourself, which really intimately describes this moment when we confront this pattern within ourselves, where it gets more uncomfortable, which is what keeps us often from stopping the pattern, because for a moment we have to accept that it gets even worse, which again, as Gandalf kind of leaves Theoden no escape, he kind of gets really, really in there with him and forces Saruman out of him. Right afterwards, after Saruman leaves and he's kind of escapes Theoden's body, there's two beautiful sentences that Gandalf says to Theoden that I think apply to your and my life today, which is he tells him, "You haven't killed me, and you will not kill him," or Theoden. And the reason I believe it's such a beautiful metaphor is that we too believe that we will die from these patterns. We will die if we leave the relationship we don't like anymore. We will die if we quit the job we hate. We will die if we leave the country we don't want to live in anymore. Whatever it is, we also tell ourselves the story of, no, I will die if I do that. And so by accepting this fear that might tell us you might die, you're already one foot out of that pattern. So Gandalf tells him, Gandalf tells him that you will not kill, you didn't kill me, so you will not kill him. And eventually, as Theoden feels himself through this contraction and lets go, you can see him kind of like the energy kind of leaving his body, him going like, and lying there, that immediately he gets extremely tired and someone needs to come and help him as he almost falls out of his chair. Which, as you might explore these body-based practices for yourself, you will learn that often afterwards, after you let go deeply in the body and you stop holding a certain pattern in your shoulders and your chest, somewhere in your body where you usually contract, there's a big relief, a big release, and often a big exhaustion that follows. And right afterwards, Theoden's face changes. He becomes younger, more radiant, and he all of a sudden recognizes his, I think Eowyn is his daughter or his niece, I forget right now. And so you can see the life coming back to him, right? Despite him thinking he died, actually the opposite happens. He becomes more alive. He has more energy. He grabs a sword. He feels his strength again. And I think this is another beautiful metaphor for what happens when we also acknowledge and confront some of these patterns within us, where if we're really honest and we have an ability to do that, right afterwards, we feel better. We feel, and we have more energy instead of less, which our mind might have predicted, right, that we do. And so I think this journey of Theoden is so powerful and so wonderful to watch for me. And I think it applies to our lives. And I think it's a nice metaphor and nice blueprint of what we can do, which is confront these patterns in our bodies around something we no longer like, we really feel scared about, but yet we want to change it. And the three methods I like the most are, one is called somatic experiencing, one is called the Greenberg method, and another one is called radical honesty. Those are three ways that I think do a great job of helping you go through your own character development arc in the way that Theoden goes through in this, in the movie. And the final point I want to make is that even though Theoden has this big release, he changes. Everyone sees him change, become young, become lucid again. What I love is that he's now not a perfect person, right? So Theoden still, throughout the movie, is a very flawed human being. He kind of doesn't want to help out at Gondor. He is like, where were they? He kind of gets angry and mad. It's like, they didn't help us. And he also doesn't want to have Eowyn fight in the war, even though she really wants to. He has some ideas around what women can do and what men are supposed to do. And so I love that point, that even when we make a big change, even when we release ourselves, when we become enlightened by being in the moment, we're still imperfect, and there's still other blind spots we have in our lives and more things we can confront, more places where we can become more relaxed and more ourselves. And I think it gives me at least a very appreciative view of what it means to be human, which means we don't have to be so perfect all the time. So even if we make a big change and make something great, that doesn't mean that now everything is perfect, right? So Theoden still has all these flaws and appears imperfect, and yet has more grace to him, throughout the movie. And I think that applies to you watching this and to my life very directly, that even when we engage in sort of healing ourselves and stepping more into life and in wanting more from life because we're kind of tired of the old patterns, tired of the old relationships, jobs, whatever it is we don't like anymore. But yet afterwards, we still have to deal with life and we're not perfect. So I hope there's something that you find relevant from comparing your life with this development of Theoden in The Lord of the Rings. And if you do, let me know in the comments if you want to see more of these videos. Always, you see me often talk about the body becoming more alive, becoming more of who you want to be from a very natural, organic place within yourself. Subscribe for more, and we will be back for more videos very soon.